Hi, this is Michele from Simply Scaife Hand Made, and today we're going to talk about the form and function of our quilting and the Baptist fan. Before I start to put any stitches on a quilt, the first thing I have to think about is, what quilt design do I want to display on this quilt? And when I make that choice, there's a few things I have to think about. What is the purpose of the quilt? For example, this quilt is just to hang on a wall or to lay on a table. So this quilt will probably not see a lot of washing in the washing machine. It will probably not get a lot of use and wear. So the quilting on this quilt can be a lot more relaxed and comfortable. I really don't have to be overly concerned about the quilting really stabilizing this quilt and lasting a lot of endurance. But for example, a bed quilt, I need to worry about, will my quilting hold that quilt together if it's on a bed, it's being scrunched up and snuggled and run through the washing machine and hung on the line or put in the dryer. All of these things need to be taken into account when we consider what design and how we want to quilt a quilt. Something that I do when I'm starting to think about quilting is I pull out a notebook and a piece of paper and a pencil and a ruler, and I draw my quilt on a piece of paper. That gives me an idea of something to play with. I can take that piece of paper and I can kind of just doodle. If I know that my block is a pinwheel, for example, this one is diamonds. I can take my pencil and play around with the different shapes and designs that I can put inside those pieces of the quilt. I can look at this triangle and I can draw loopy lines or flowers. I can play with it on paper before I put it on fabric. If I want to try out several designs, one thing that I do, and I don't have it to show you right now, but is I draw my quilt and you can lay wax paper on top of it, doodle your design, move that wax paper out of the way and put another piece of wax paper on, doodle a different design. You can try out a few different things then with your quilt top. And that's something that I really like is drawing it out on paper and kind of playing with the idea. I can consider then how tight do I want the stitches, how close do I want my gauge to be. With this pinwheel, for example, I have two different pinwheel quilts here. The first pinwheel quilt that I did, I was just kind of meandering along free motion. I put a floral design on it, and I liked it very well. And it gave it a little bit of stability and a little bit of pop, but it wasn't a lot of quilting. The next time that I worked on the pinwheel, I decided I didn't want to do the same thing. This one has an all-over meander with little daisy-like flowers working all the way around it. And it kind of played off the back design more than the front. With this Dresden, I decided to really minimize the quilting to draw attention to the Dresden plate. I simply outlined each piece of the Dresden and gave it some simple cross quilting lines. It's basic, it's easy, and it doesn't detract from the main quilt work. So those are some ideas about designing and playing with it. First of all, always know what you want to do with that quilting. Do you really want to stabilize, or is it just for decoration? Quilts that are just for decoration don't require as much thought and planning. Moving on to today, we're going to look at a quilt design on our sampler. I hope you've all been working along. We've got the crosshatch, the clamshell, and now today I want to show you the Baptist fan. I'm actually working on a hand quilt right now that has the Baptist fan motif in it. Basically, the Baptist fan is some echoing half circles that just span the quilt and repeat. This is a repetitive design. It's excellent for the outside border of a quilt or for an all-over side-to-side quilting. I like it because it's very leisurely and easy to quilt. The circles, the curves aren't too tight in the Baptist fan. You can make those echoes as far apart or as close together as you want them to be, and it's just really a great way to add a little softness to maybe a quilt design that has a lot of straight lines. When I marked the Baptist fan on the quilt that I'm working on, I simply used my little canning jar as my starter circle. What I did was I found the middle of the quilt, I laid it on just like I would have for the clamshell, but instead of making a whole half circle here, instead I only drew a quarter of that circle. From there, instead of moving this, I freehand echoed the outer lines. Now, I'm an even number kind of person, so I have a 2-inch half circle. I moved 2 inches over for the next ring and 2 inches over. And I like 1, 2, 3, 4 echoes on my Baptist fan. That's my personal favorite, but in a larger quilt, you can use more echo rings. On a smaller quilt, you can do less. You can also put them much closer together. My daughter got a kick out of all my wiggly free-handed designs, and she bought me a half circle template. And let me tell you, this was really easy to do. You simply line it up, and this one goes every inch, but you know me, I like a 2-inch gauge, so I simply took my pencil and traced the circles at every 2 inches. One thing with the Baptist fan, it's much easier to start from the edge and work your way across when you're marking it, simply because they bump into each other. If you look at these fans, you do have the half circles here, but it's a half circle repeating. And there's a lot of freedom here. You can do your circles all the fans going the same direction, or you can mix them up and your fans can be going any which way you want them to. For the purpose of this particular sampler, I just made 4 line echoes of Baptist fans, and I have them all going the same direction. That's just what I like doing. On my quilt that I'm actually quilting, I have a row that goes this way, and then I have a row of Baptist fans going the opposite direction to kind of mix up the texture on the top of the quilt. But let's get started. I'm sitting in a comfortable chair. I have good posture. I have my thimble, my scissors, my thread. My feet are in a comfortable place. My quilt and my arms are right where I can reach them and see them well. My quilt is in my hoop. It's comfortable. It's not too tight. I'm going to start in the center because personally I like to work in the middle of a quilt and work my way out. That way any puckering can kind of smooth its way out. I feel like it gives you a much smoother finish. This pin's in the way, so we're going to just take it out. No big deal. I've got my knot in and my thread started. What I want to do, again, is get that needle straight up. My underneath finger is to the back of the needle tip so that I'm not poking myself. Rock back, create a hill. Push through. Stand up again. Go through the layers of the fabric without poking my finger. Rock back, make a hill with my thumb, push through. In this you can see we have loaded 2 stitches on the needle. We push through, and voila, there we've started. All we want to do is get consistent, comfortable stitches. Now bear in mind, for the purpose of this sampler and this video, my thread is a contrasting color to my fabric. However, if I were quilting this on a quilt for a bed or for a wall, my personal preference is to keep my thread a complementary color. It's usually the same color as my material or a very close one, so that my stitches don't detract from the actual piecing of my quilt. So as I work, I'm just taking my time, I'm relaxed, and I'm making sure that I have a consistent gauge between my stitches and I'm not getting puckers while I'm quilting. And there we go. We have our first arch ready to go. I hope you'll try the Baptist fan in your next quilt, and if you have any questions about quilting or quilt designs, please leave me a message at simplyscaife@yahoo.com or down in our comment box. Let's go quilt something beautiful.